Hey guys, tonight we begin with a curious little twist of history. Something so ordinary yet so strange, it feels like it belongs in a fairy tale, but one where the dragons are contracts and the knights are, well, lawyers in tunics. We're diving into the world of marriage, dowry, and divorce in the Middle Ages, a time when love was optional, but a good dowry was non-negotiable. It's a tale of practical romance, bizarre traditions, and the occasional escape clause, all woven into the fabric of a world that's both alien and oddly familiar. If you enjoy drifting off to stories of forgotten times, maybe give a like or subscribe, but only if you feel like it. No pressure. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and settle in. Let's step back a few centuries and wander through a world where saying "I do" came with a lot of fine print. You wake to the soft clatter of a village stirring to life. It's 1250, and you're in a small settlement somewhere in the heart of medieval Europe. Think muddy paths, thatched roofs, and a faint whiff of wood smoke clinging to the air like a shy guest. The sun is barely up, painting the sky a sleepy pink, and the world feels both alive and unhurried. A rooster crows with unnecessary enthusiasm, and a cow, probably named something practical like Bessie, lows in the distance as if mourning its breakfast. You're 16 or thereabouts. Ages are fuzzy when birthdays are more about surviving than celebrating, and you're lying on a straw mattress that crinkles with every move. Your home is a simple affair. Wattle and daub walls, a dirt floor swept clean by your mother's relentless broom, and a hearth that's the heart of the house, glowing faintly from last night's embers. You stretch, your woolen tunic scratching at your skin, and notice the air feels different today, heavier, like it's carrying a secret. Your parents are already up, their voices low and conspiratorial over the clink of wooden bowls. Your mother, her hands dusted with flour from kneading tomorrow's bread, glances at you with a look that's equal parts love and calculation. Your father, whittling a stick into something vaguely useful, clears his throat. "We need to talk," he says, and you know what's coming. It's not about the harvest or the neighbour's pig that keeps rooting in your garden. It's about marriage. Your marriage. And just like that, your quiet morning in this quiet village takes a turn toward the inevitable. In the Middle Ages, marriage isn't the stuff of ballads or stolen glances across a moonlit meadow. It's a transaction, a deal struck with the precision of a blacksmith hammering iron. You're not just a person, you're a piece in a larger game of survival, where families stitch themselves together through vows and shared resources. Love? That's a bonus, like finding an extra potato in the stew. For peasants like you, marriage is about practical things, merging two plots of land to grow more barley, pooling livestock to ensure there's enough milk for winter, or settling a feud before it turns into a brawl at the midsummer fair. If you were a noble, it'd be grander. Alliances between families, maybe even kingdoms, sealed with a wedding feast and a contract thicker than the Bible. But here, in your village of maybe 50 souls, it's simpler but no less serious. Your mother sets down her dough and wipes her hands on her apron. "We've found you a match," she says, her voice soft but final. The candidate is a widower, maybe 30, with a weathered face and a small plot of land that grows decent turnips. He's not unkind, they say, and his goats seem to like him, which is apparently a character reference. You're not sure how to feel. The idea of marrying someone you barely know, someone who smells faintly of hay and whose idea of romance is probably fixing a fence, feels like stepping into a river without knowing its depth. But saying no? That's not really an option. Refusing could mean a life of spinning wool in a convent, or worse, becoming the village oddity, whispered about as the one who talks to the chickens. And so, you nod, your heart doing a quiet somersault. The irony of it all tickles you, even as you sit there, picking at a loose thread on your sleeve. The church, which looms over this village like a stern grandparent, calls marriage a sacred union, a bond blessed by God himself. And yet, here you are, being bartered like a particularly promising heifer. The priest will sprinkle holy water and mutter Latin, but everyone knows the real blessing is the extra field your family might gain, or the dowry your betrothed's family will bring. It's a holy business deal, wrapped in prayers and sealed with a handshake. You glance at your father, who's now sharpening a plough blade with unnecessary focus, and wonder if he felt this same mix of resignation and curiosity when he married your mother. Your parents start talking details, their voices blending into the crackle of the hearth. The widower's land borders your family's, which is convenient, fewer fences to mend. He's got a cow, 2 goats, and a reputation for being steady, which in this world means he doesn't drink all his wages or start fights at the alehouse. Your dowry, they explain, will be modest but respectable. A linen shift your mother wove, a wooden chest your father carved, and maybe a few chickens if the negotiations go well. You're not sure whether to be flattered or insulted that your future hinges on poultry, but this is how it works. Your family gives something to start your new life, and his family promises to keep you fed and clothed, at least until the next plague or bad harvest. As you listen, you notice the absurdity of it all. The Middle Ages are obsessed with order, God's plan, the church's rules, the king's laws. But marriage feels like a chaotic hodgepodge of hope, greed, and practicality. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council declared that marriages must be public, with bans announced weeks in advance to ensure no one secretly married to someone else, or, heaven forbid, a cousin. Yet in practice, things get messy. You've heard stories of clandestine marriages, couples whispering vows in a barn, hoping the priest doesn't find out. Those rarely end well, unless you count a lifetime of excommunication as a happy ending. You step outside to clear your head, the morning air cool against your face. The village is waking up now, smoke curls from chimneys, and a neighbour's dog barks at nothing in particular. You pass the church, its stone walls squat and reassuring, and wonder what your wedding day will feel like. Will you stand at the church door, exchanging vows while the village watches, judging the quality of your dowry and the cut of your groom's tunic? Will you feel like a bride, or just a pawn in a game of land and livestock? The thought makes you chuckle softly. Here you are, in a world that takes itself so seriously, yet it's measuring love in bushels of grain. You kick a pebble down the path, watching it skitter into the mud. Marriage, you realise, is less about you and more about the world you're part of. It's about keeping the village fed, the fields ploughed, and the church happy. It's about survival, dressed up in ceremony and sprinkled with holy water. As you head back to the house, where your parents are still plotting your future over a bowl of pottage, you feel a strange calm settle over you. This is your story now, whether you like it or not. And somewhere, in the back of your mind, you hope your new husband at least knows how to mend a fence. You're back in your medieval village, the year still a muddy 1250, and the air hums with the quiet rhythm of daily life. The sun is higher now, warming the thatched roofs and coaxing a faint shimmer from the dew-soaked grass. You're sitting on a wooden stool outside your family's hut, watching a neighbour herd a gaggle of geese down the path. Their honking sounds like a poorly rehearsed choir, and you smile despite the weight in your chest. Your parents have been talking marriage for days, and now the conversation has turned to the dowry, the strange, inevitable currency of your future. It's a dance, this dowry business, one where every step is calculated, every gesture loaded with meaning, and the music is the clink of coins or the bleat of a particularly valuable goat. In the Middle Ages, a dowry is your family's ticket to sealing the deal, a bundle of goods that says, "Here's our contribution to your new life." don't mess it up. If you're the bride, which you are in this story, your family is expected to provide something tangible, maybe a chest of linens, a few chickens, or, if you're lucky, a cow with a name like Bessie and a reputation for giving good milk. If you're the groom, you'd bring a dower, land or money set aside to support your wife if you die first, which, given the state of medieval hygiene, isn't exactly unlikely. It's a system designed to keep everyone fed and clothed, but it feels more like a high-stakes barter where your worth is measured in livestock and your future hinges on how well your father haggles. You glance toward the house, where your parents are deep in discussion with your betrothed's family. Your father, his hands calloused from years of ploughing, is gesturing animatedly, pointing to a sack of grain, as if it's a treasure from a far-off land. Your mother, ever practical, is folding a linen shift she wove last winter, its edges frayed but sturdy. This is your dowry taking shape, piece by careful piece. It's modest. Your family isn't rich after all, but it's enough to show you're not coming empty-handed. There's the linen, a wooden spoon your brother carved, and 3 chickens that are, frankly, more reliable than most people you know. Bessie the cow is the star of the show, though, and you can tell your father's proud of her. She's a good milker, he says, as if Bessie's output is the key to world peace. The irony of it all settles over you like dust. The dowry is supposed to be a gift, a way to set you up for a stable life with your new husband, the widower with the decent turnip patch. But it feels more like a ransom, a payment to prove your family's worth and secure your place in his household. In noble circles, the stakes are even higher. You've heard tales of dowries that include entire villages, forests, or castles, like when Eleanor of Aquitaine's daughter married the King of Castile in 1770, her dowry was a fortress and enough gold to make a dragon rethink its career. Down here in the village, though, it's simpler but no less serious. Your dowry is your family's life savings, scraped together from years of careful harvests and mended clothes. Losing it would be like losing a limb. You wander to the edge of the yard, where Bessie is chewing cud with a serene expression, oblivious to her role in your fate. The dowry system, you realise, is a tangle of hope and pragmatism. It's meant to ensure you and your husband don't starve, but it's also a chain that binds you to him. If the marriage goes sour, getting your dowry back is trickier than convincing a pig to bathe. The church, which loves to stick its nose into everything, has strict rules. If your husband dies, you might keep part of his dower, land or money set aside for you, but only if you don't remarry. If you try to leave, the dowry stays with him, unless you can prove something wild, like he's not really your husband because he's secretly a monk. Good luck with that. You chuckle softly at the thought, kicking a pebble into the dirt. The church's obsession with marriage as a sacred, unbreakable bond is almost comical when you see how it plays out. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council laid down rules to make marriages public and proper, with bans announced weeks in advance to avoid secret weddings or accidental incest, a surprisingly common problem when everyone's vaguely related. But the dowry, that's where the real drama happens. You've heard whispers of families bankrupting themselves to marry off a daughter, only for the groom to squander it on bad ale or a doomed venture to sell wool in Flanders. And yet everyone acts like this is all part of God's plan, as if he personally approves of every cow and spoon changing hands. Your father calls you over, his face a mix of pride and exhaustion. "We've settled it," he says, and you notice the sack of grain is gone, replaced by a handshake with your betrothed's father. The widower himself is there, standing awkwardly by the fence, his tunic patched but clean. He nods at you, and you nod back, wondering if he's as nervous as you are. His family's contribution is a small plot of land and a promise to repair the roof of your new home, which leaks when it rains. It's not a fairy tale, but it's practical, and in this world, practical is as close to love as you might get. As the adults talk, you slip away to the village square, where a peddler is selling ribbons and a child is chasing a stray goose. The dowry dance, you think, is a strange ritual, one part hope, one part desperation, and a whole lot of haggling. It's absurd, really, how much weight rests on a few chickens and a cow named Bessie. Yet there's something comforting in it too. Your family's giving you what they can, tying you to a future they believe in, even if it's not the one you'd choose. You twirl a blade of grass between your fingers, watching the village hum along, and wonder if your new life will feel like a home or just a really well-negotiated trade. The day has come, and you're standing in the heart of your medieval village, the year still a stubbornly muddy 1250. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of fresh straw and the faint tang of ale from last night's brewing. The village church looms before you, its stone walls squat and unyielding, like a stern elder who's seen too many winters. Today is your wedding day, and your best tunic, only slightly less scratchy than your everyday one, feels like a costume for a role you're not sure you're ready to play. The sun is out, painting the thatched roofs gold, and the village is buzzing with a quiet excitement, as if even the chickens know something's afoot. You're about to say, "I do," to the widower, with the decent turnip patch, and the weight of it settles over you like a wool blanket, warm, heavy, and just a bit suffocating. The ceremony itself is less about romance and more about getting the job done. You're not inside the church yet. That's for the mass later. Instead, you're at the church door, where medieval weddings often happen, because apparently the porch is holy enough for vows, but not so holy that the whole village can't gawk. Your betrothed stands across from you, his face weathered but not unkind, his hands clasped awkwardly, as if he's not sure what to do with them. The priest, in a robe that's seen better days, is muttering something in Latin, and you nod along, hoping you're agreeing to marriage and not, say, a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. The villagers are gathered in a loose semicircle, whispering about your dowry. Bessie the cow is a particular point of pride, and sizing up your groom's patched but respectable tunic. Here's the quiet irony. The church insists marriage is a sacred bond, a divine knot tied in heaven and blessed on earth. Yet standing here, it feels more like signing a contract for a new plough, except the plough snores and comes with a family. Consent is supposed to matter. You and your groom both have to say, "I do," willingly, a rule hammered out by the church to avoid forced marriages. But willingly is a slippery word when your parents are watching from the crowd, your father's hand resting on the hilt of a knife he uses for carving spoons, and your mother's eyes are practically shouting, "Don't mess this up." In theory, you could refuse. In 13th century England, the church technically allowed it, but good luck explaining that to your family, who've already traded 3 chickens and a sack of grain to make this happen. So you nod, and your "I do" comes out more like "I suppose." The vows are simple, almost comically so. You promise to love, honour, and not run off with the miller's son, who's rumoured to have a charming smile, but no land to his name. Your groom promises to provide, protect, tea, and not gamble away your dowry on a bad batch of ale. The words are plain, stripped of flourish, but they carry a weight that presses against your chest. This is your life now, tethered to a man you've spoken to maybe twice, in a world where happily ever after means not starving during the next bad harvest. The priest sprinkles holy water, and the crowd murmurs approval, though you suspect they're mostly here for the feast afterward. Speaking of the feast, it's no royal banquet, but it's the best your village can muster. A trestle table is set up in the square, laden with coarse bread, a stew thick with barley and the odd bit of mutton, and barrels of watery ale that taste like ambition more than flavour. A fiddler, enthusiastic but wildly off-key, scrapes out a tune that makes the dogs howl and the children dance. Your neighbours raise their cups, toasting your future with a mix of sincerity and tipsy cheer. Your groom offers you a shy smile and you return it, wondering if this is what partnership feels like. A shared moment of awkward hope amid the chaos of village life. The absurdity of it all creeps in as you sip your ale. The church, with its towering cathedrals and endless rules, calls this a sacrament, but it feels like a deal sealed with bread and good intentions. You've heard stories of noble weddings, like the one in 1236, when Henry III of England married Eleanor of Provence, where the dowry included half a province and the feast lasted days. Your wedding is humbler, but the stakes feel just as high. This is your world now. Your husband's turnip patch, your shared hut with a roof that leaks, and the faint hope that you'll figure each other out before the first frost. As the fiddler mangles another tune, you notice your mother watching you, her face soft with something like pride or relief. She's been through this, you realise, stood at a church door, said her vows, and built a life from it. The church may call marriage eternal, but you're starting to see it's also practical, a bridge between families, fields, and futures. You glance at your groom, who's laughing at something his cousin said, and wonder if he's as nervous as you are. Maybe he's wondering too if this will work, if you'll be partners, or just two people sharing a roof and a cow. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the square. The feast winds down, and the villagers start to drift home, leaving behind crumbs and empty cups. You stand with your new husband, the weight of the day settling into your bones. The vows are said, the deal is done, and now the real work begins, building a life from promises and turnips. You take a deep breath, the evening air cool against your skin, and let the moment sink in. This is your story now, for better or worse, and you're ready to see where it leads. You're back in your medieval village, a few years deeper into 1250-something, and the world feels a little heavier now. The thatched roof of your hut leaks when it rains, the fire in the hearth is more smoke than warmth, and your husband, once the widower with the promising turnip patch, has developed a habit of trading your best chickens for ale at the village tavern. His snoring, which you thought you'd get used to, sounds like a boar wrestling a beehive, and you're starting to wonder if marriage was oversold. It's evening now, the sky a soft bruise of purple, and you're sitting by the fire, mending a torn cloak, your thoughts drifting to escape. Not running away to join a band of minstrels escape, but something trickier, getting out of this marriage in a world where, till death do us part, is less a vow and more a life sentence. In the Middle Ages, divorce as you might imagine it, a clean break, a signed paper, a fresh start, is about as real as a unicorn. The church, which looms over your village like a particularly judgmental owl, insists marriage is indissoluble, a sacred bond forged in heaven and tougher than a blacksmith's anvil. Once you're in, unless you're willing to navigate a maze of rules, priests, and fees that make a pilgrimage to Compostela look like a Sunday stroll. But there's a loophole, a sly little escape hatch called annulment, which is like saying the marriage never happened at all. It's the medieval equivalent of hitting undo, but it's about as easy as convincing your cow Bessie to stop eating your garden. You poke at the fire, sending a spark spiralling up the chimney, and consider your options. Annulment requires a reason, and not just, he leaves his muddy boots everywhere, or he bartered my favourite hen for a jug of questionable mead. The church has a short list of acceptable excuses, and they're not exactly user-friendly. The most popular is consanguinity, claiming you're too closely related to your husband, which was a surprisingly common dodge among nobles who suddenly discovered a shared great-great-uncle when the marriage soured. In 1199, King John of England tried this trick to annul his marriage to Isabella of Gloucester, arguing they were distant cousins. The Pope rolled his eyes, or so you imagine, but let it slide. mostly because John had gold and power to smooth things over. For you, a peasant with no royal cousins or spare gold, this option feels like trying to convince the village priest you're secretly a duke's niece. Another route is claiming the marriage wasn't consummated, which is bold, humiliating, and requires proof. Yes, proof, in front of a room full of clerics who'd rather be anywhere else. You imagine standing in a drafty church court, explaining your bedroom logistics to a bishop with a quill and a skeptical frown, and decide that's a hard pass. There's also impotence, which you could accuse your husband of, but that's a one-way ticket to village gossip, and probably a grudge that lasts until the next harvest festival. Other grounds, like pre-contract, he was already promised to someone else, or coercion, you were forced into the marriage, exist in theory, but proving them is like teaching a pig to read Latin. Possible maybe, but not worth the effort. You sigh, threading your needle through the cloak's rough wool. For common folk like you, annulment is a pipe dream. It's expensive. Church courts don't work for free, and bribes don't grow on trees. It's public, which means every nosy neighbour from here to the next village will know your business. And it's slow, dragging on for months or years, while you're still sharing a hut with a man who thinks romance is not yelling at the goats. So what's the alternative? Separation, the unofficial kind. You could pack your few belongings, your mother's linen shift, a wooden spoon, maybe a chicken if you're quick, and move back to your parents' hut. It's not legal, and the church will tut disapprovingly, but it's practical. Your husband might grumble, but he's not likely to chase you down, especially if he's distracted by a fresh barrel of ale. You've heard whispers of other ways out, though they sound like tavern tales spun by bored peddlers. In some corners of 14th century France, there's talk of divorce by combat, where unhappy couples supposedly settled things with a duel, husband versus wife, flailing with sticks or sacks of sand. It's probably a myth, but the image of you and your husband facing off in the village square, armed with nothing but a broom and bad aim, makes you chuckle. More realistically, some couples just drift apart. He might join a monastery, claiming a sudden call to God and free bread. You might end up living with a relative, spinning wool and dodging questions about your husband back home. It's not freedom, but it's a kind of peace. As the fire crackles, you think about the absurdity of it all. The church, so obsessed with marriage as a sacred union, seems less concerned with whether you're happy and more with whether you followed the rules. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council tried to tidy things up, mandating public bans to prevent secret marriages and accidental bigamy, but they didn't make escaping any easier. You've heard of noble women who pulled it off, rich widows who bought their way out with gold, or clever lawyers, but for you, a peasant with a leaky roof and a husband who smells faintly of turnips, the system feels rigged. Your dowry, that hard-won bundle of chickens and linen, is gone, tied up in your husband's household unless you can prove the marriage was a sham. And Bessie? She's still giving milk, but she's his now, legally speaking. You set the mended cloak aside and stare into the fire, its glow softening the edges of the room. Escape, you realise, is less about breaking free and more about finding a way to live with the choices you didn't make. Maybe you'll stay, learning to tune out the snoring and guarding your chickens like a hawk. Maybe you'll slip away one day, starting over in another village where nobody knows your story. For now, though, you're here, in this quiet moment, with the fire and the night and the weight of a world that loves its rules more than its people. You pull your shawl tighter, letting the thought drift like smoke, and wonder what tomorrow will bring. The fire in your village hut has burned low, and the world outside is quiet, save for the occasional hoot of an owl. Marriage in the Middle Ages, you realise, was less about love and more about survival. A delicate dance of dowries, vows and loopholes, all under the watchful eye of the church. It's strange to think how much effort went into tying two people together, only for them to find ways to slip free. And yet, in its own way, it's oddly human. People then, like now, were just trying to make it work, one cow or castle at a time. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the stars above your village, bright and untroubled. The Middle Ages fade into the background, a quirky, complicated world that somehow feels both distant and close. If you enjoyed this little journey, maybe leave a like or subscribe, but only if you're still awake. For now, rest easy and let the past slip away like a dream. You're about to slip into the damp, shadowy world of a medieval dungeon. Yes, a dungeon. Not the stuff of dragons and knights, but the gritty, oddly human reality of a place where time crawled slower than a snail on a rainy day. Imagine the irony, a prison cell of all places as your portal to a soothing evening's tale. If this kind of quirky history sparks your curiosity, maybe give a like or subscribe, but only if you enjoy this sort of thing. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, and let the cool air carry you back centuries. You're about to drift into a forgotten corner of the past, where stone walls whisper stories of their own. You wake up in medieval Europe in the year 1278 in a small drafty cell tucked beneath a crumbling castle in northern England. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and moss, and it settles on your skin like a thin, invisible shawl. Your eyes adjust slowly to the dimness, catching the faint glow of a torch somewhere down a corridor you can't quite see. You're lying on a bed of sorts, a scattering of straw over a stone floor, slightly damp but softer than you'd expect, like a grudging concession to comfort. It's not much, but it's enough to cradle your aching limbs, which feel heavy, as if the weight of the castle above is pressing down on you. You're not sure how you ended up here. Maybe it was an unpaid debt, a jest at the Lord's expense that landed poorly, or just the bad luck of lingering too long in a tavern with the wrong company. Medieval justice, you see, was less about evidence and more about mood swings. A chronicler of the time, one brother Alfric, once noted that a man could be tossed into a cell for gazing upon a bailiff with insufficient deference. Insufficient deference. The phrase alone tells you everything you need to know about the era's priorities. You shift on the straw, feeling it prick through your thin tunic, and take a moment to breathe. The air is thick, almost chewy, with a tang of mildew that clings to the back of your throat. You sit up slowly, your back protesting, and survey your new home. The cell is small, maybe 6 feet by 8, its walls made of rough-hewn stone that glistens faintly with moisture, like the inside of a cave. Each block is uneven, carved by hands that cared more for speed than symmetry, and the mortar between them crumbles slightly when you press your fingers against it. High on one wall, a single iron grate, no bigger than a loaf of bread, lets in a sliver of grey daylight. It's not much, but it's enough to remind you that the world outside still exists, moving along without you. The light catches motes of dust, drifting lazily in the air, and you watch them swirl, mesmerized by their slow dance. There's a strange calm in this, a quiet that forces you to notice the smallest things, the texture of the straw beneath your fingers, the faint chill of the stone against your bare feet. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a steady drip of water, each drop landing with the precision of a metronome. It's oddly soothing, like a heartbeat for this underground world. Then there's another sound, a quick skittering patter across the floor. You squint into the shadows and spot a rat, its eyes glinting like tiny black beads as it pauses to consider you. It's not afraid, just curious, as if you're the intruder in its domain. You decide to call it Cedric, because even a rat deserves a name in a place like this. Cedric scampers off, leaving you alone again, but his brief visit feels like a welcome, a reminder that life persists even here. You stand, stretching cautiously, and explore the cell as best you can. The walls are cool to the touch, slick with condensation, and you trace your fingers along their surface, feeling the grooves and imperfections. In one corner, you find something unexpected, a carving, crude but deliberate, etched into the stone. It's a simple cross, flanked by the name Edric and the year 1274. You run your fingers over the letters, wondering who Edric was. A thief? A heretic? Or just another soul who crossed the wrong noble? The carving feels like a message, a whisper from someone who sat here, just like you, counting the drips and watching the light shift. It's a small connection, but it grounds you, makes the cell feel less like a void and more like a place with a history. A sound at the door snaps you out of your thoughts. Heavy boots scrape against the stone floor and a key rattles in the lock. The door creaks open, revealing a guard. A wiry man with a face half hidden by a hood, his eyes tired but sharp. He carries a wooden tray with a chunk of bread, grey and hard as a river rock, and a wooden cup of watery ale that smells faintly of mud. "Eat," he mutters, sliding the tray through a slot in the door before turning away. You call him Grumble in your head because his voice is all low growls and half-formed complaints. The bread is stale, crumbling into gritty bits when you break it, and the ale tastes like it was scooped from a ditch, but you eat anyway. You take small bites, chewing slowly, letting the act of eating fill the silence. It's not about hunger, it's about routine, a way to mark time in a place where time feels like a suggestion. You settle back onto the straw, the bread and ale gone, and listen to the dungeon's quiet symphony, the drip of water, the faint rustle of Cedric or his kin, the occasional cough from another cell down the hall. You wonder about the others here, their stories locked away behind these walls. The dungeon is grim, yes, but there's a strange peace in its slowness, its simplicity. You're not fighting battles or chasing dreams. You're just here, breathing, noticing, waiting. You lean against the wall, feeling Edric's carving under your palm, and let your eyes drift to the grate, where the light is fading to a soft, dusky grey. The world outside hums along, but for now, you're content to rest in this quiet, forgotten place, where even a rat and a scratched name feel like company. You've been in the dungeon a few days now, or maybe it's been weeks. Time down here is a slippery thing, like trying to hold water in your hands. The cell, that 6x8 box of damp stone, has started to feel less like a trap and more like a strange, quiet world with its own pulse. You're in northern England, 1278, and the dungeon isn't just a hole to toss people into. It's an ecosystem, humming with its own peculiar rhythm. You lean back against the cool wall, straw prickling through your tunic, and let the sounds wash over you. The steady drip of water from some unseen leak, the faint rustle of your rat friend Cedric, and the low murmur of voices from cells you can't see. It's not peaceful exactly, but it's steady, like the slow breathing of someone asleep. You start to notice the patterns. The guards come and go in shifts, their boots scraping the stone floor like a metronome. There's Grumble, the wiry one with the hooded eyes and a voice like gravel, who mutters about everything, his aching feet, the cold, his wife's turnip stew that's more mush than meal. Then there's the other one, a stout man you've dubbed Barker for his laugh, a sharp bark that echoes down the corridor. They're not cruel, not like the tales of chains and whips you might have imagined. They're just men, bored and underpaid, trudging through a job that's as dull as the bread they slide through your door. You catch Grumble complaining one day about the harvest, how the rains came too late and the barley's half rotted. Another lean winter, he grumbles, not to you but to the air, as if the dungeon itself might sympathise. It's oddly comforting, these snippets of their lives. Even down here, people worry about crops and suppers. The other prisoners add their own notes to the dungeon's quiet song. Down the hall, there's a man who sings hymns, his voice wobbly but stubborn, cracking on the high notes of some Latin chant. You don't know the words, but the melody is soothing, like a lullaby from a world that feels far away. Another voice, sharp and indignant, rants about a stolen pig. Apparently, it was his pig, and the neighbour who took it is a thieving cur who'll answer to God. You smile because it's absurd, isn't it? A pig sparking a feud that landed someone here, shouting into the dark like it'll change anything. Medieval problems had a certain charm, a knack for turning the mundane into high drama. You wonder what your own crime was. Maybe you haggled too hard at the market, or smirked at a knight's rusty armour. A chronicler from York once wrote of a man jailed for borrowing a horse with excessive enthusiasm. Enthusiasm. The medieval mind loved its euphemisms. You explore your cell as much as one can explore a box barely big enough to lie down in. The walls are your map, each stone a story. You find more carvings near Edric's Cross from 1274, tally marks scratched in rows, a faint outline that might be a tree, and a crude spiral that could be a snail or just a bored prisoner's doodle. You trace them with your fingers, feeling the grooves worn smooth by time or touch. It's a kind of conversation, isn't it? You and these strangers, linked by stone and solitude. You imagine Edric sitting here, maybe humming to himself, counting the days with a sharpened pebble. Did he listen to the same drips, watch the same sliver of light through the grate? The thought is grounding, a reminder that this place, grim as it is, holds echoes of others who found ways to endure. Food comes once a day, delivered by Grumble or Barker. It's always the same. A chunk of bread hard enough to chip a tooth, a cup of ale that tastes like it was brewed in a bog, and sometimes a bowl of pottage. A watery stew with flecks of barley and something green that's probably cabbage, though it's hard to tell. You learn to eat slowly, breaking the bread into tiny pieces, letting each bite linger. It's not about hunger, it's about giving yourself something to do, a ritual to anchor the endless hours. You sip the ale, grimacing at its sour bite, and think of the taverns above, where men drink better brews and argue over pigs. The pottage, when it comes, is a small event. You scoop it with your fingers, savouring the faint warmth, the way the barley sticks to your teeth. It's terrible, but it's yours. You start to talk to yourself softly, just to hear a voice. You tell Cedric about the village you imagine outside, carts creaking, children chasing geese, the smell of baking bread. Cedric doesn't care, but he listens, or at least he doesn't run away. You tell him about Edric, spinning a tale that he was a baker who stole flour to feed his family, then got caught because he tripped over a stray dog. It's nonsense, but it makes you chuckle, and the sound bounces off the walls, a small rebellion against the silence. The dungeon, you realise, is teaching you patience. There's no rush here, no deadlines or quests. Just you, the stone, and the slow drip of water. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the rhythm of this underground world carry you, like a boat on a gentle current, drifting nowhere but content to float. Days in the dungeon blur together, marked only by the shifting light through the iron grate and the slow rhythm you've come to know, the drip of water, the scurry of Cedric the rat, the distant hymn of a fellow prisoner. It's 1278 Northern England, and this cell, your 6x8 world of damp stone, has become familiar, almost intimate. But it's not a forgotten pit, not entirely. This dungeon, you've learned, is more of a holding pen for minor offenders, not the torture chamber of grim legend. No chains dangle from the walls, no screams echo down the corridors. Instead, there are visitors, and with them come stories that weave the outside world into your quiet confinement, making the cell feel less like a cage and more like a strange underground tavern where tales are currency. One morning, you're roused by the soft shuffle of sandals on stone. A priest appears at your door, a thin man with a tonsured head, his scalp gleaming like a polished egg in the torchlight. His voice is soft, almost a whisper, like he's practiced speaking to sleeping children. "Repent, my child," he says, kneeling by the door, his eyes glinting with something that's not quite piety, curiosity maybe, or a hunger for gossip. "Tell me, did you truly filch that merchant's purse, or was it merely a jest gone awry?" You're not sure what you're accused of, but you play along, spinning a vague tale about a mix-up at the market, a sack of apples mistaken for your own. He nods, lips twitching, clearly savouring the drama. You suspect he'll retell your story at the Priory, embellished with a flourish or two. Before he leaves, he slips a small apple through the slot in the door, bruised and soft but sweet as a summer day. "For your soul," he says with a wink that suggests he knows it's more for your stomach. You bite into it slowly, letting the juice linger, its tartness a tiny miracle in this damp world. It's the best thing you've tasted since the pottage, and you save half for Cedric, though he's more interested in the core. Another day, an old woman stops by, her steps slow and deliberate, her basket heavy with herbs and charms she sells to the guards. She's not supposed to talk to prisoners, but the rules down here are as flexible as Grumble's mood. She leans close to the door, her voice a low rasp, like dry leaves on a path. "The miller's at it again," she confides, as if you've known each other for years. "Cheating on his wife with the tanner's daughter. Everyone knows, but no one says." You smile, picturing the village buzzing with whispers, heads shaking over mugs of ale. Her stories are a lifeline, stitching you to the world beyond the grate. She tells you about the fair coming up, where jugglers toss torches and pigs escape their pens, and about the blacksmith's new apprentice, a clumsy boy who burned his hand on his first day. "He'll learn," she says, "or he'll starve." There's a dry humour in her words, a survivor's wit that makes you chuckle. She slips you a sprig of lavender, its scent sharp and clean, a fleeting escape from the dungeon's mildew. You tuck it into the straw, breathing it in when the air feels too heavy. The visitors don't come every day, but when they do, they bring the village to you. You start to piece together its rhythm, the market's clamour, the church bells toll, the gossip that binds it all. One afternoon, Barker, the guard with the barking laugh, lingers by your door, unusually chatty. "Heard about the cow?" he asks, grinning. "Wandered into the church during Mass, knocked over the altar candles." You laugh, imagining the priest's face, his sermon drowned out by moos and panicked shouts. Barker's laugh echoes down the hall, and for a moment, you're just two people sharing a story, not prisoner and guard. He doesn't stay long, but his tale lingers, painting pictures in your mind as you lie on the straw. You start telling stories of your own, whispering them to the walls when no one's near. You talk to Edric, the name carved in the stone from 1274, imagining him as a farmer who got drunk and insulted a knight's horse. "Called it a sway-backed nag," you murmur, grinning at your own invention. "Landed him here for a month." The story grows each time you tell it. Edric tripping over a goose, Edric bribing a guard with a loaf of bread. It's nonsense, but it fills the silence, makes the cell feel less empty. You wonder if Edric did the same, spinning tales to keep himself sane. Maybe he talked to his own Cedric, or carved that cross to mark a prayer answered. The stories, yours and theirs, become a kind of ritual, like the daily bread or the drip of water. They're small, but they matter. You learn to listen closely, to catch the priest's sly chuckle, the old woman's knowing tone, Barker's booming laugh. The dungeon, for all its grimness, is alive with these moments, these threads of connection. You lean back, the lavender's scent faint but present, and let the voices linger in your mind. They're not just stories, they're proof that the world keeps turning, that you're still part of it, even here, in this quiet, forgotten place. You've settled into the dungeon's rhythm now, here in northern England, 1278, where time moves like a sluggish river. The cell, your 6x8 world of damp stone and straw, has become a kind of home. Its sounds, dripping water, Cedric the rat's scurry, the hymn singer's off-key notes, as familiar as your own heartbeat. The torchlight fades and flares, the iron grate high on the wall offers slivers of grey sky, and you've learned to mark the days by these small signs. But it's that grate, that tiny square of daylight, that pulls your attention most. It's your window to the world beyond, a tease of freedom that's both cruel and comforting. You lie back on the straw, its damp prickling your skin, and let your eyes linger on that patch of sky, letting it draw you out of the stone and into the life you can only imagine. The grate is small, barely wider than your hand, but it's enough to show you the weather's moods. One day, the light is sharp and blue, stinging your eyes with its brightness. Another, it's heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of rain. You hear it sometimes, the soft patter of drops on the castle walls above, a sound that makes the dungeon feel even quieter, like it's holding its breath. You start to build a picture of the world out there, piecing it together from the sounds that drift down. There's the clatter of cartwheels on cobblestones, uneven and rattling, as if the driver's in a hurry to reach the market. You hear shouts too, merchants haggling over sacks of grain, their voices rising and falling like a song. 3 pennies for that sorry barley, one yells, and you smile, imagining the indignation, the waving hands, the crowd egging them on. A church bell tolls in the distance, slow and solemn, calling the village to prayer or marking a wedding, maybe a funeral. Each sound is a thread, weaving a tapestry of a world that's close but untouchable. The guards, Grumble and Barker bring more pieces of that world with their chatter. Grumble, the wiry one, talks of a fair coming up, his voice gruff but tinged with excitement. Jugglers and a pig race, he mutters, passing your cell. Might even get some decent ale for once. You picture it, stalls piled with apples and wool, children chasing each other through the mud, the air thick with the smell of roasted meat. Barker, with his barking laugh, mentions a new lord's tax, squeezing us like turnips, and you wonder how the villagers manage, scraping by under the castle's shadow. Their words, tossed carelessly as they pace the corridor, are like crumbs you gather, each one feeding your hunger for the outside. You don't ask questions. They'd clam up if you did, but you listen, storing every detail like a monk copying a manuscript. You start to daydream, not of escape, but of the small things that make a life. You imagine sitting by a fire, the kind that crackles and warms your bones, not the dim torches that flicker here. You picture a loaf of bread, fresh from an oven, its crust crisp and golden. Nothing like the grey bricks Grumble slides through your door. You think of the village tavern, where men argue over dice and women laugh over spilled ale. These dreams are sharp, vivid, made brighter by the dungeon's dimness. A chronicler from Lincoln once wrote of a prisoner who spent a year in a cell for singing too loudly at a feast. Too loudly. The thought makes you chuckle, the sound soft against the stone. You wonder if he dreamed of songs too, or if he just carved his name somewhere, like Edric did in 1274. The grate becomes your anchor, a way to measure time when the days blur. You watch the light shift, morning to dusk, and guess at the season. The air carries a hint of wood smoke now, sharp and autumnal, suggesting harvest time, bonfires, apples piled high in baskets. You think of the village preparing for winter, bundling hay, slaughtering pigs, the women weaving by candlelight. It's a world you're part of, even if you're stuck down here, and that thought is oddly soothing. You're not forgotten, not entirely. Grumble once promised, half joking, to bring you a scrap of roasted meat from the fair if he's in a good mood. You don't count on it, but the idea lingers. A small kindness in a place that doesn't deal in kindness. You trace Edric's carving again, the cross and name etched in the stone, and wonder what he saw through that grate. Did he watch the same clouds, hear the same bells? You talk to him sometimes, whispering questions into the dark. What kept you going, Edric? You ask, your voice barely audible. Was it the sky or something else? There's no answer, of course, but the act of asking feels like a ritual, like lighting a candle in a church. The dungeon, for all its weight, has taught you to notice these things. The way the light softens at dusk, the texture of the straw, the faint hope in a guard's careless promise. You lean back, eyes on the grate, and let the world beyond fill your mind. A quiet dream that carries you until sleep comes. The dungeon has woven itself into your bones now, its damp stone walls and straw-strewn floor as familiar as your own heartbeat. It's 1278 northern England, and you've learned to live by this place's quiet pulse. The steady drip of water from some unseen crack, the soft scurry of Cedric the rat, your unlikely companion, and the faint glow of torchlight that ebbs and flows like a tide. The iron grate high on the wall, your tiny window to the world, has become a kind of friend, offering slivers of sky that shift from bright blue to storm grey, each change a whisper of the life beyond. You've memorized the sounds drifting down from the castle above, the creak of cartwheels, the sharp haggling of merchants, the distant toll of a church bell calling the village to prayer. The stories from visitors, the priest's sly confessions, the old woman's village gossip, Barker's barking laugh, have kept you tethered to that world, even as the stone walls hold you fast. But this morning, something feels different. The air is crisper, laced with the sharp tang of wood smoke and the faint sweetness of rotting leaves, a sign that autumn is sinking its teeth into the land. You're lying on the straw, tracing the familiar grooves of Edric's carving, a cross and name scratched into the stone in 1274, when you hear it. Footsteps, heavier than Grumble's shuffling gait or Barker's heavy plod, and the unmistakable jangle of keys, sharp and deliberate, like coins in a purse. You sit up, straw pricking through your thin tunic, your heart quickening despite the dungeon's lesson in slowness. The footsteps stop outside your cell, and the torchlight flickers, casting long shadows that dance across the walls like ghosts. The door, that heavy slab of oak and iron you've studied for days, or is it weeks, creaks as a key grates in the lock. You hold your breath, half expecting Grumble's usual mutter or Barker's laugh. But it's Grumble who appears, his wiry frame outlined in the doorway. His face, usually creased with complaints about turnips or rain, is softer today, almost sheepish. "You're out," he says, his voice low, like he's delivering news he doesn't quite believe. "Debt's paid, or someone vouched for you. Don't ask me, I just follow orders." You blink, the words slow to sink in, as if the dungeons taught you to distrust sudden change. Out? After all this time you've measured in drips and torchlight, in the stories you've spun for Edric and Cedric, you stand, your legs wobbly from days of sitting and lying on cold stone, and feel the cell tilt slightly. Or maybe it's just your head, dizzy with the idea of freedom. Grumble steps back, gesturing toward the corridor, and you take a tentative step, your bare feet cold against the floor. The air feels different already, stirred by the open door, carrying a faint warmth from the torches. You glance back at the cell, at the straw pile that's cradled you, at Edric's carving, at the grate that's been your sky. It's strange, this pang of reluctance, as if the dungeon's become a kind of home. Its quiet rhythms a comfort you didn't expect to miss. You think of Cedric, probably watching from some shadowy corner, and half smile, wondering if he'll miss your whispered tales. "Come on then," Grumble says, not unkindly, and you follow, your steps slow, each one a small rebellion against the weight of the stone you're leaving behind. The corridor is narrow, its walls slick with moisture, and the torches cast a flickering glow that makes the shadows sway like dancers. You pass other cells, their doors closed, and hear the faint hum of the hymn singer, still at it, his voice a thread of stubborn hope. You wonder if he'll get his own key one day, or if he'll carve his name beside Edric's. The stairs at the end of the corridor are steep, carved unevenly into the stone, and you climb them carefully, your hand brushing the wall for balance. Each step feels like a crossing, a slow ascent from one world to another. The air grows lighter, less heavy with mildew, and you catch a stronger whiff of wood smoke, mingled with something new. Earth, hay, the faint sweetness of apples. Your legs ache, unused to the effort, but there's a quiet thrill in the movement, in the act of climbing towards something other than stone. You emerge into the castle courtyard, and the world hits you like a song you'd forgotten. The sky is vast, a dizzying expanse of blue streaked with wisps of cloud, and the sunlight stings your eyes, forcing you to squint. The air is sharp with autumn, crisp and alive, carrying the smells of mud and smoke and baking bread from somewhere beyond the walls. The courtyard itself is a bustle of life, servants hauling baskets of apples, their red skins gleaming, a boy chasing a stray chicken, his laughter high and wild, a cart rumbling past, its wheels crunching gravel. You stand still, letting it wash over you, the noise and colour and movement so overwhelming after the dungeon's grey quiet. A woman with a basket of wool glances at you, her eyes curious but not unkind, and you wonder what she sees. A ragged figure blinking at the sun, or just another soul passing through. Grumble lingers nearby, watching you with a mix of impatience and something softer, maybe pity. "Go on then," he says, nodding toward the gate that leads to the village. "Don't make trouble, or you'll be back." You nod, not trusting your voice, and take a step toward the gate. The ground feels strange under your feet, softer than stone, and you realize you're walking on dirt, flecked with straw and pebbles. You pass a pile of firewood, its scent sharp and resinous, and hear the clang of a blacksmith's hammer in the distance, steady as a heartbeat. The village lies just beyond, its thatched roofs peeking over the castle walls, and you can almost taste it, the chatter of the market, the warmth of a tavern, the ordinary chaos of life. You pause at the gate, glancing back at the castle, its grey bulk looming like a stern parent. You think of Edric, his name etched in the dark, and the priest with his bruised apple, the old woman with her lavender sprig, Barker's tale of the cow in the church. The dungeon wasn't just a cell, it was a pause, a strange, slow space where you learn to listen, to notice the drip of water, the texture of straw, the weight of a single story. You smile, a little wryly, at the irony, a dank prison teaching you patience of all things. You think of the chronicler who wrote of a man jailed for singing too loudly at a feast, and wonder if he too found something in his cell worth keeping. Maybe he left a carving, or a song, or just a memory of the sky. You take a deep breath, letting the autumn air fill your lungs, sharp with smoke and earth and freedom. The village waits, alive with the hum of markets and bells and gossip, and you step forward, your legs steadier now. You carry the dungeon with you, not its weight, but its quiet lessons, the value of a whispered story, the comfort of a rat's company, the hope in a sliver of light. You don't know what comes next, a tavern, a trial, or just a long walk home, but you're ready or close enough. As you pass through the gate, the castle at your back, you feel the world open up, vast and messy, and yours again. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, maybe you'll dream of stone walls and torchlight, of Edric's cross, and a sky that's always waiting, just beyond the grate. You wake up in medieval Europe, in a small village nestled between rolling hills and a sluggish, reed-choked river. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business, where gossip travels faster than a horse and cart. The hour is late, perhaps 2 in the morning, and the world is wrapped in a hush so deep it feels like the earth itself is holding its breath. The thatched roofs of the village gleam faintly under a waxing moon, their edges blurred by a thin mist that clings to the ground. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots, its call soft and mournful, blending with the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Your home, if you can call it that, is a modest lean-to at the village's edge, where the tidy rows of cottages give way to brambles and shadows. It's not much, a straw pallet, a rickety stool, a hearth that's more ash than fire, but it's yours, tucked away where respectable folk don't bother to wander. You're not a farmer, toiling in the fields from dawn to dusk. You're not a blacksmith, hammering iron into horseshoes or swords. You're not a priest, preaching salvation to a flock of weary souls. Your trade is quieter, stranger, one that thrives when the world turns its back and sinks into sleep. You're a grave robber, a collector of what the dead no longer need, a shadow who turns loss into livelihood. It's not a calling you chose with pride, but hunger has a way of making choices for you. Tonight you have work to do, and the thought of it stirs you from your pallet with a quiet resolve. You rise, careful not to creak the warped boards beneath your feet. The air inside your lean-to is damp, carrying the faint scent of earth and mildew. You pull on a threadbare cloak, its hem frayed from too many nights brushing against thorns and mud. Your tools are simple, laid out like a surgeon's kit, though your work is far less noble. There's a spade, its handle chipped and smoothed from use, a sack that smells of damp earth and past endeavours, and a small lantern with a shutter to keep its light from spilling too far. You check the lantern's oil, barely enough, but it'll do. Waste not, want not, as the villagers might say, though they'd spit at the thought of you applying their proverbs to your trade. Tonight's job is specific. The baker's widow passed last week, taken by a fever that swept through the village like a thief in the night. She was a kind woman, or so the whispers went, always slipping an extra loaf to the children who lingered near her oven. But kindness doesn't pay your debts, and word around the tavern is she was buried with a silver ring, a gift from her late husband. A ring like that could fetch enough coin for a month's worth of grain, maybe even a new cloak to replace the one that's more holes than wool. You don't linger on the morality of it. Such thoughts are a luxury you can't afford. The dead don't need silver, and you need to eat. You slip out of your lean-to, closing the door with a gentleness that feels almost absurd for a man about to rob a grave. The village is asleep, its windows dark, its chimneys smokeless. The only light comes from the moon, half hidden behind a veil of clouds, and the stars, sharp and unblinking. You move quietly, your boots sinking into the soft earth, avoiding the main path where a stray dog or a sleepless farmer might spot you. The church looms ahead, its stone walls a silent sentinel against the night. You pass it with a glance, half expecting its cross to glow with judgment, but it's just stone and shadow, same as always. The graveyard lies just beyond, a patchwork of uneven mounds and wooden crosses, some so weathered they tilt like drunken sailors. The fresher graves are easy to spot, their earth still loose, not yet settled by time and rain. The older ones sink into the ground, as if the dead are slowly pulling their beds deeper. You've been here before, not often, because a careless grave robber is a dead one. Too many disturbed graves, and the villagers start sharpening pitchforks. You choose your targets with care, and tonight it's the widow's grave, tucked near the edge of the yard where the grass gives way to nettles. You pause at the graveyard's boundary, where a low stone wall marks the line between the living and the dead. The irony of your work isn't lost on you. The baker who needed dough to feed the village now feeds your trade in death. His widow, who once handed out bread with a smile, lies beneath your feet, her silver ring a small rebellion against the poverty that binds you. You almost chuckle, but the night demands silence, and you've learned to listen. You set your spade to the earth, the blade biting into the frost-kissed soil, and begin to dig. The first scoop is always the hardest, breaking the ground's resistance, but you move with a practiced rhythm. The soil is heavy, clinging to your spade like a grudge, but you're patient. Each movement is deliberate, measured, because haste is your enemy. You've heard of others in your trade, fools who toppled headstones or left muddy trails straight to their doors. You're not like them. You work Shadean system, work with care, your spade a quiet companion in the dark. The earth yields slowly, and you settle into the steady rhythm. Scrape, lift, dump. Each motion a small act of defiance against the night's stillness. The widow's grave is fresh, the dirt softer here, but it's still work, and your breath clouds in the cold air. You glance at the stars, too bright tonight, and wish for a thicker veil of clouds. The lantern's faint glow is enough to guide your hands, but you keep it low, its shutter tight. The village sleeps on, unaware, and you're grateful for it. The baker's widow, they said, was buried with care, wrapped in a shroud finer than most could afford. That ring, though, silver, simple, but heavy with promise, called to you. Not out of greed, but necessity. The winter's been lean, the harvest thin, and the Lord's taxes don't wait for better days. You dig deeper, the earth growing colder, denser as you descend. Your muscles ache, but the work is soothing in its own strange way. A quiet conversation between you, the spade, and the night. You think of the widow fleetingly. Did she slip that ring on every morning, a reminder of her husband's love? Or was it tucked away, saved for special days? You shake off the thought, the sentiment as useless as a dull blade. The dead don't care, and neither should you. The spade strikes wood, a dull thud that quickens your pulse. The coffin, not deep, not fancy, just a box to hold what's left. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow despite the chill, and glance toward the church. No light, no movement, just you and the grave, partners in the dark. The irony lingers like the mist. The baker fed the living, and now his widow feeds you. You don't laugh, laughter's too loud for this work, but there's a wry twist to your thoughts as you clear the last layer of dirt. The night is still yours, and the stars, for all their brightness, keep your secrets. You kneel, ready to pry the coffin open, the promise of silver close enough to taste. You kneel beside the widow's grave, the earth freshly turned, your spade resting against a mound of soil like an old friend weary from the night's work. The ground is heavier than you'd hoped, a stubborn blend of clay and frost that clings to the blade as if reluctant to part with its secrets. Each scoop is a study in patience, a quiet negotiation with the earth. Scrape, lift, dump. The rhythm is slow, deliberate, almost meditative, lulling you into a strange communion with the night. You move with care, because haste is a grave robber's undoing. One misplaced step, one careless clod of dirt, and the village might wake to whispers of your trade. The air is sharp, carrying the bite of early winter, and the stars above glitter with a cold indifference, your only witnesses in this solitary act. The work is lonely, but there's a peculiar comfort in its solitude. The village sleeps, its people tucked beneath threadbare blankets, dreaming of fuller harvests or the promise of heaven. You, though, are awake, carving through the earth with a precision that feels almost sacred. Grave robbing in the 13th century, you've come to know, isn't always about greed, though the thought of a silver ring keeps your hands steady. Sometimes it's about survival, about clawing your way through a world that offers little to those without land or title. The lords take their tithes, the church its dues, and the poor are left to scrape by however they can. You've heard of others in your trade, some peddling bones to alchemists who swear they hold the key to immortality, others slipping peasant knuckles into velvet pouches, passing them off as saintly relics to desperate pilgrims. You don't deal in such deceptions. A ring, a brooch, a stray coin, that's your currency, small and practical, enough to keep hunger at bay. Your spade strikes a root, gnarled and unyielding, and you freeze, heart stuttering as the dull thud cuts through the silence. It's louder than you'd like, a sound that feels like it could wake the dead themselves. You glance toward the church, its stone walls looming like a silent judge against the moonlit sky. No lantern flickers, no door creaks, just the night, still and watchful. You work around the root, careful not to snap it. A broken root means torn earth, and torn earth means questions come morning. You've heard tales of careless robbers, their clumsiness betrayed by toppled crosses or muddy trails leading straight to their doors. You're not them. You're a shadow, a breath in the dark, leaving only the faintest ripple in the earth's surface. The rhythm returns, and you sink into it, the spade an extension of your will. Scrape, lift, dump. The pile beside the grave grows, neat and contained, because a sloppy mound is as good as a signed confession. You think fleetingly of the widow. Did she know, in her fevered final days, that her ring would draw someone like you? Did she care? The dead keep their silence, and you've learned not to ask questions they can't answer. Sentiment is a luxury, heavy as the clay on your spade, and you can't afford to carry it. Still, there's an intimacy to this work, a quiet bond between you and the one you're robbing. She doesn't curse you, doesn't rise in wrath. She lies still, a silent partner in your strange trade, as you carve your way closer to her resting place. The soil shifts, growing looser now, the frost giving way to softer, darker earth. You're close, perhaps a foot from the coffin, if the gravedigger was as idle as most. You pause, your breath clouding in the cold, stinging your lungs like a gentle reprimand. The lantern's glow is faint, its shutter drawn tight to keep the light from spilling too far. You've learned to work by touch as much as sight, your fingers reading the earth's texture like a monk reads scripture. The stars are brighter than you'd prefer, bathing the graveyard in a pale, silvery glow that makes you feel exposed. You'd rather have clouds thick and heavy to cloak your work, but the night offers what it offers, and you take it without complaint. You think of the stories that cling to your trade, whispered in taverns or muttered in churchyards. Grave robbers, they say, are cursed, doomed to wander as restless spirits, forever digging in the dark. You don't believe in curses, not truly, but you've murmured a prayer or two on nights when the wind howls too sharply, or the shadows seem to move. Superstition is a stubborn weed, rooting deep even in skeptical hearts. You shake it off, focusing on the task. The coffin's near now, its wooden edge grazing the tip of your spade. You slow your movements, not from fear, but from precision. A splintered coffin is a sign of disturbance, and signs are your enemy. You work with care, each scoop a whisper, each lift a vow to remain unseen. There's a dry humour in the act, if you tilt your head just right. The baker's widow, who fed the village with her husband's warm loaves, now feeds your quiet rebellion against want. You don't laugh. Laughter is too loud, too reckless, but the thought curls the corner of your mouth as you dig. The earth is your canvas, the spade your brush, and tonight you're painting a small defiance against a world that grinds the poor to dust. The soil is softer now, almost welcoming, as if the grave knows its time is near. You clear another layer, the dirt piling neatly beside you, and the night wraps you in its silence, a blanket against the cold. The work is slow, but it soothes in its own strange way. Each scoop is a step closer to the ring, to a meal, to another day above ground. You think of the village waking at dawn, oblivious to your labour. They'll pass this graveyard, cross themselves, and move on, never suspecting the earth's secrets were disturbed. That's your art, the silent shovel, the unseen hand. You're no thief, not in the way they'd think. You don't break into homes or snatch purses from belts. You take what the dead leave behind, a kind of borrowing from those who've no use for it. The coffin's close now, its outline clear in the loosened earth. You kneel, brushing dirt from your hands, and ready yourself for the next step. The night holds you, quiet and calm, and the stars keep their vigil as you work on, chasing a glint of silver in the dark. You kneel in the cold earth, the widow's grave now a shallow pit beneath you, its secrets laid bare. The coffin lies exposed, its wood damp and softened by the soil, splintering under the faint pressure of your spade. The air is heavy with the scent of turned earth, a rich, loamy smell that mingles with the crisp bite of frost. You pause, your breath clouding in the moonlight, and adjust the lantern's shutter to cast just enough glow to see by. The stars are still too bright for your liking, their light spilling across the graveyard like an accusation, but the night remains silent, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. You're alone, or so you hope, as you set your spade aside and reach for the coffin's lid. The wood creaks as you pry it open, a low groan that seems to carry too far in the stillness. You wince, glancing toward the church, its stone silhouette unmoved against the sky. No light flares, no footsteps echo, just the night, holding its breath as you work. Inside the coffin, the baker's widow lies wrapped in a simple shroud, the fabric pale and slightly frayed, a humble farewell for a woman who fed the village. Her hands are folded neatly across her chest, and there, on her finger, the silver ring glints faintly, catching the lantern's dim light. It's smaller than you imagined, unpolished, but it holds a quiet promise. Enough coin for grain, maybe a new pair of boots to replace the ones worn thin by nights like this. You reach for it, your fingers brushing the cold, stiff fabric of her shroud, and a shiver runs through you, not from the chill but from the act itself. You mutter a quick apology under your breath, a habit born more of caution than faith. The dead don't care, you tell yourself, but a whispered word might keep the ghosts at bay, just in case. You slip the ring free, its weight slight but solid in your palm. It's a simple band, etched with a faint pattern worn smooth by years of wear. You turn it over, half expecting some inscription, some trace of the baker's love, but there's nothing, just silver, cold and quiet. You tuck it into your sack, the faint clink against a stray pebble sounding louder than it should. The coffin lies open, a dark wound in the earth, and you feel a sudden urge to close it, to restore the widow's rest. It's not sentiment, not really, just the practical need to leave no trace. You ease the lid back into place, careful not to let it snap shut, and begin the slow work of refilling the grave. The earth falls softly, each scoop a step toward invisibility. A good grave robber is a ghost, leaving the graveyard as untouched as it was at dusk. You pat the soil flat, scattering a few leaves and twigs to mask your work, blending the mound into the night's natural chaos. As you work, your mind drifts to the peril of your trade. Grave robbing isn't just frowned upon, it's a crime. one that carries a heavy price. In some villages, they drag you to the gallows, your body left to sway as a warning. In others, they get creative, branding your face with a hot iron, or worse, burying you alive in the very grave you disturbed. You've heard of a man in York who met that fate, his screams muffled by the earth as the villagers shoveled dirt over him. Poetic, perhaps, but not the kind of poetry you'd care to inspire. The thought makes you glance over your shoulder, half expecting to see a lantern bobbing in the distance. But the graveyard is still, the village asleep. You're safe for now, but safety is a fleeting thing in your line of work. The earth is nearly level now, the grave as unremarkable as its neighbours. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, the cold air stinging your skin. The ring rests heavy in your sack, a small victory against the hunger that gnaws at you. But there's no triumph in it, only necessity. You think of the widow again, unbidden. Did she wear that ring every day, a quiet reminder of her husband's warmth? Or was it a treasure, saved for special moments, now buried with her out of love or oversight? You shake the thought away, as useless as a dull spade. The living have no time for such musings, not when survival demands a clear head and steady hands. The risks don't end with the law. Superstitions cling to your trade like damp earth to your boots. The villagers whisper of ghosts, of spirits that rise to curse those who disturb their rest. You don't believe in such things, not truly, but the night has a way of playing tricks. A sudden gust, a shadow that shifts too quickly, and even your skeptical heart skips a beat. You've muttered prayers on windier nights, not because you think the dead are listening, but because the act soothes the quiet panic that creeps in. Tonight, though, the air is calm, the stars steady. You finish the grave, smoothing the last of the soil, and step back to survey your work. It's clean, unremarkable, a grave like any other. No one will know, not unless they dig as you did, and who would bother? You sling the sack over your shoulder, the ring a small weight that feels heavier than it should. The lantern's glow is nearly gone, its oil spent, but you don't need it now. The moonlight is enough to guide you, though you wish it were dimmer. You move away from the grave, your boots silent on the grass, and cast one last glance at the church. It stands silent, its cross a dark outline against the sky, offering neither blessing nor curse. The irony of your work lingers like the mist around you. The baker's widow, who gave bread to the living, now gives you a chance to live another day. You don't smile. Smiles are for the careless. But there's a wry twist to your thoughts as you turn toward the woods, ready to slip back into the night's embrace. The widow's grave lies behind you, its earth smoothed and scattered with leaves, as if you were never there. The night is still, the air heavy with the damp chill of early winter, and the stars burn bright above, their light a quiet accusation you try to ignore. Your sack hangs over your shoulder, the silver ring inside a small but weighty prize, its faint clink against a stray pebble, a reminder of the night's work. You move away from the graveyard, your boots silent on the frost-kissed grass, each step a careful dance to avoid snapping a twig or rustling leaves. The village lies a mile off, its thatched roofs barely visible through the mist that clings to the fields. You choose the long path home, through the woods rather than the open road, where a stray farmer or sleepless shepherd might spot you. The night is your ally, but only if you respect its rules. The woods are dense, a tangle of oak and ash that swallow the moonlight, casting dappled shadows across your path. The air here smells of moss and decay, a sharp contrast to the loamy scent of the graveyard. You pull your cloak tighter, its frayed edges brushing against your legs, worn thin from too many nights like this. The lantern dangles from your belt, its oil spent, its shutter closed to avoid even the faintest gleam. You don't need it now. Your eyes have adjusted to the dark, and you've walked this path before. each twist and root as familiar as the lines on your hands. The sack feels heavier than it should, the ring a nagging presence, as if it carries the widow's silent judgment. You shake the thought away. Sentiment is a trap, and you've no room for it. Your steps are measured, deliberate, because movement draws attention, and attention is your enemy. A fox darts across your path, its eyes flashing briefly in the moonlight before it vanishes into the underbrush. You freeze, not out of fear, but instinct. Stillness is your shield. You wait, listening for the crunch of leaves or the snap of a branch, but the woods are quiet, save for the faint whisper of wind through the trees. You move on, your breath clouding in the cold, each exhale a small rebellion against the silence. The village feels far away, its warmth and safety a distant promise, but you're not in a hurry. Haste leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to pitchforks. You think as you walk of the strangeness of your trade. You're not a thief, not in the way the villagers would think. You don't break into homes or snatch purses from market stalls. You take from the dead, from those who no longer need their trinkets, a kind of recycling if you squint. The ring will find its way to a merchant in the next town, a man with a crooked smile and no questions, who pays in coin and keeps his mouth shut. You'll use the money for practical things, grain to fill your belly, a new cloak to replace the one that's more holes than wool, maybe a wedge of cheese if the price is right. Nothing extravagant, just enough to keep you going until the next job, the next grave, the next night spent under the stars' watchful gaze. The path dips into a shallow ravine, the ground soft with fallen leaves and pine needles. You move carefully, avoiding the slick patches where frost has settled. The woods are alive in their own quiet way, a chorus of small sounds, crickets humming, an owl calling, the distant gurgle of a stream. You feel a strange kinship with it all, as if the night has claimed you as one of its own. You're no knight, no lord, no priest with a flock to guide. You're a shadow, slipping through the cracks of a world that doesn't see you, doesn't want to see you. There's a kind of freedom in that, though it's a freedom laced with risk. You think of the risks, because how could you not? Grave robbing isn't just a sin in the church's eyes. It's a crime in the eyes of the law, one that carries a heavy toll. In some villages, they'd hang you from the nearest oak, your body left to sway as a warning to others. In others, they'd brand your face, mark you as a pariah for all to see. You've heard worse tales. A robber in Lincoln buried alive in the grave he defiled, his screams muffled by the earth as the villagers shoveled dirt over him. The irony isn't lost on you. A grave robber buried, a thief entombed. You don't dwell on it, but the thought lingers, a cold weight in your chest as you navigate the woods. Superstitions creep in too, unbidden but persistent. The villagers whisper of ghosts, of spirits that rise to curse those who disturb their rest. You don't believe in such things, not really, but the night has a way of playing tricks. A branch sways, a shadow shifts, and your heart skips, just for a moment. You've muttered prayers on windier nights, not because you think the dead are watching, but because the act soothes the quiet fear that creeps in. Tonight, though, the woods are calm, the air still. No ghosts, no curses, just you, the sack, and the ring that promises a little more time above ground. You reach a clearing, the trees thinning to reveal a glimpse of the village in the distance, its rooftops faint against the horizon. Dawn is still hours away, but the sky carries a hint of grey, a subtle warning that your time is finite. You pause, crouching low, and scan the fields for movement. A shepherd might be out early, checking his flock, or a traveller passing through on the road. You see nothing, hear nothing, and move on, keeping to the shadows where the moonlight doesn't reach. The ring in your sack feels heavier now, not with weight, but with meaning. It's more than silver. It's survival. A a small defiance against a world that grinds the poor to dust. You think of the widow despite yourself. Did she wear that ring every day, a quiet reminder of her husband's love? Or was it tucked away, saved for special moments, only to be buried with her out of care or oversight? You shake the thought away, but it clings, stubborn as the frost on your boots. You wonder what she'd think of you, this shadow in the night, taking what she left behind. Would she curse you, or would she understand? The dead don't speak, and you've learned not to ask. Still, there's a strange intimacy in your trade, a silent conversation between you and those you rob. They don't judge, don't gossip, don't betray you to the village. They just lie there, partners in your quiet crime. The path curves upward, climbing a gentle slope that leads to the edge of the woods. Your cottage isn't far now, its sagging roof a familiar shadow against the sky. You move faster, though still careful, the promise of rest pulling you forward. The ring will stay hidden, tucked under a loose floorboard where no one will look. You've done this before, and you'll do it again, because the world doesn't change, and neither does hunger. The woods give way to open fields, the village closer now, its silence a comfort after the graveyard's wait. You stick to the hedgerows, avoiding the road, your cloak blending with the shadows. History won't remember you, you know that. The chronicles will sing of kings and battles, of cathedrals rising to the sky, but not of you, the quiet soul who turned death into a living. There's a poetry in that, though it's not the kind anyone will write down. You reach the edge of your cottage, its door a familiar creak in the dark. You slip inside, the air damp and familiar, and hide the ring where it belongs. The sack goes in a corner, the spade beside it, and you sink onto your pallet, the straw crackling under your weight. The night has carried you through, and now it's done. You close your eyes, the stars fading beyond your walls, and let the silence take you.